Welcome, everyone. I hope you are enjoying the Climate and Health Symposium so far. I want to welcome you all to the Agriculture and Climate Change Pathways to Resilience Food Breakout session. My name is Katrina Irwin, and I am one of the program coordinators here at the CLIO Institute, as well as your moderator for today. If you have any questions throughout this breakout session, I encourage you all to utilize the Zoom question feature. With that being said, it is now my pleasure to introduce to you all the leader of this breakout session, Dr. Brooke Hansen. Dr. Hansen, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Katrina, and welcome everyone. I'm afraid John's probably a hard act to follow, and I'm just so excited to be 1 degree of separation from John. So I'll catch up with all that later. And today I just want to spend a few more minutes talking about some of the themes that John brought up and that the film Kiss the Ground also touches upon. Thinking about agriculture and our climate crisis and the intersections with COVID-19, we have a lot to think about right now, don't we? And as you can see, I am the Director of Sustainable Tourism at USF in Tampa. And one of my agendas is to really think about our two biggest industries in Florida, agriculture and tourism, and to weave those together with some sustainability thread and try to transform some of our economies here in Florida to sustainable production and sustainable tourism. I'm also a big fan of the Sustainable Development Goals. You'll hear more about that today as well. And here's just a little more about my bio. I've spent many years doing food systems research with Indigenous people in upstate New York with the Haudenosaunee. Spent 16 years working with Kanaka Maoli people or Native Hawaiians in Hawaii, helping them to rebuild some of their ancient landscapes that were very sustainable and fed 500,000 people before Europeans ever went to the Hawaiian Islands. So I really believe that a lot of that ancient wisdom that Indigenous people carry has important clues for how we are to move forward. Technology is wonderful. We want to use it. I'll talk about it today, but we also want to think about what Indigenous people can teach us about the lands that we're in. And feel free to email me as a follow-up. You can see my information is right there. As I said, what an honor, 1 degree of separation from John. So that was really fun. I'm sure you had a great session. But I want to talk about agriculture and climate change and COVID-19. And I summarize all this up as a hot mess. And there are so many interconnections between all of these different themes that we need to dive in and explore. And we need to find pathways to resilience, which I'm going to end up with today. And as all of you know, COVID-19 has brought our food system and our agriculture system into sharp focus, not just in this country, but all around the world, as supply chains have been disrupted, as store shelves have emptied, as we've seen so many stories in the news of storms and flooding and fires, and all of this is taking a huge hit on our food production system. And at every level, from food production in terms of the farm fields, right onto distribution and food finding their way onto store shelves. And so we're all well familiar with these scenes, the terrible storm that wiped out millions of acres of Midwestern crops. That was last summer in August. And then, of course, most recently, the wildfires in California and also in Colorado, record-breaking fires. And we've heard a lot about homes lost, and we've heard a lot about disruptions, but we haven't heard a lot about the hit that it's taken on farming, agriculture, and ranching. Civil Eats is always a great place to go for articles on our food system and sustainability. And so they've been highlighting that issue. And all this, of course, is intertwined with the climate crisis. SDG number 13 is climate action. Climate change is already changing the way that we farm. It's changing temperatures. We're going to have more and more temperatures above 90 degrees in so many parts of the nation. And here's a great series by The Nation in their Food and Environmental Reporting Network, a series called Taking Heat, dispatches from the front lines of the climate justice movement as we're trying to adjust. And we're going to have to do a whole lot more than adjust. We're going to have to dive in and tackle this problem. And of course, what's been happening with the storms, you've all seen that. And this literally was just a couple days ago. Iota battering Nicaragua, hitting as a Cat 5 storm with wind speeds over 140 miles an hour and then ripping through Central America. So you can imagine what that's done to agricultural production and the food system there. Climate change, climate crisis, and we cannot look at these issues in isolation. We have to look at these as interconnected waves. As you can see here, this is a very popular graphic that a lot of people like to use to talk about. We can't just talk about COVID. We can't just talk about the economy. We have to go deep and we've got to go broad, and we have to start understanding some of the roots of these problems. And we have to apply an equity lens. We cannot move through these spaces and get to a better place without this. And the climate crisis has shown us that it is a force multiplier for inequalities. COVID has shown to be a force multiplier of inequalities of so many kinds. So all this has been coming together around the globe, and we need to pay attention, we need to wake up, and we need to figure out some positive ways forward. But we cannot forget that equity has to be at the root of any global climate action or recovering from COVID. And I'm an anthropologist, and we like to look at the roots of our problems, the deep roots in culture and history. And we have to look at the intertwined processes that led to where we are right now. The global systems that created the climate crisis and COVID-19 are the same ones that have created all of the injustices in our world. And in many ways, it's our capitalist, neoclassical economic system, neoliberal economics that have led to these problems. We have overpopulation, we've destroyed biodiversity, we're in too close proximity to other animal species, and this set the stage for COVID. So we have to understand these interconnected processes and how humans are affected, especially labor. If we think about agriculture and farm workers, they're hard hit by the climate crisis, by rising temperatures, and very hard hit by COVID, and very underpaid, right? Because that's what happens in a capitalist commodified food system as we have created. So we need to talk about all of these interconnected issues. And we need to specifically focus on what are the effects of the climate crisis on agriculture, on food security. There's so many interactions going on here. We have more and more people in the world. We have a scarcity of resources. Food insecurity is rising. Droughts are happening. All these things are exacerbating food insecurity. And then one of the issues that we really need to tackle is food waste. We waste 40% of the food that we produce. That could go to feed people, so it could go to assist with our food insecurity issue. But think about the other lens here. A lot of these issues are being exacerbated by climate change. Food waste also makes climate change worse by contributing to more greenhouse gases, especially methane, the production of methane from food going to landfills. So look at all of those interconnected issues. And how does climate change impact agriculture? In so many different ways. It's not just heat, but it's loss of water, evaporation, different pests moving into areas that they were not before. So all of those things, and actually many more, loss of natural resources and things like that. So a lot of interconnected issues happening there too. Climate change has already been affecting crop yields for quite some time already, especially in the hungriest parts of the world. So we have that to contend with as well. And our ag food system is one of the main culprits in our climate crisis because of the greenhouse gas emissions that are produced in the entire system that takes our food from farm to fork. That entire system produces so much greenhouse gases. And so this needs to change. And luckily, we can transform our agriculture and food system. And that's really what we're all working for together, all the people attending the symposium. And our global food system contributes about 1/3 of the world's greenhouse gases. And where does that come from? Have you ever thought about large scale commercial monocropping agriculture? All of the machinery, all of the fossil fuels that are involved with that, all of the carbon that's not being sequestered in the soil with these kinds of practices. And indoor factory farms for animals are huge producers of greenhouse gas emissions. So many facets of modern commercial agriculture. And then let's think about the food system. Once we produce that food and release all those greenhouse gases, those foods are going to travel around the world. Okay, that does not sound like a good idea. Should I be eating a carrot from California? Let's think about that. I live in Florida. Think about the trucks and the transport and the emissions to get that carrot from California to my house. That doesn't make any sense on so many different fronts. Yet the globalized food system set things up to be just like this, that we can have any food anytime we want, no matter if it's out of season or not, because it'll be in season somewhere in the world. So we have to change our consumer ideas about food as well. So lots of greenhouse gas emissions coming from those food miles. And it's always a fun exercise if you teach and have students to have them look at food miles and how much a specific food had to travel to get to one's plate. And so look at this in terms of a pear, 5,000 miles for a pear. Eat a papaya from your yard. You can walk to your backyard and pick it. So many greenhouse gas emissions. And again, we've got to come back to consumer culture. We shouldn't desire things that are out of season. We have to change our eating habits. And food waste, as I said, contributes 10% to greenhouse gases, mostly from the production of methane. Well, that doesn't make any sense because we could take that food waste and make compost, and we can also put it in an anaerobic digester, capture that methane, use it as a cooking source, as a fuel. We can fix this problem, and we need to. If it's the one thing that we need to come to, it's addressing the food waste issue. And the greenhouse gas issue in the food system, we could think about adapting, but that is not enough. This is a wicked problem. Adaptation is not going to do it. We have to move to mitigation and we have to go to big solutions. So we call this a wicked problem. And we need circular economy and systems thinking to solve it. We can no longer use linear thinking. And here's some linear thinking examples for you here. Food shortage, make more food. Oh, there are consequences to energy use. We'll just use a different kind of energy. These kinds of things don't address issues of equity, and they often don't address issues of climate change either. And there's a great chart of circular economy. We want to close the loop, and we want to make sure that that waste stays in the loop and that we are composting and repurposing as much as possible. And we can never forget the people part of this. The triple bottom line is something we follow in sustainability. And I don't like to use the profit word. I like to use prosperity instead. And I'm heavily weighing on the people and the planet side. Prosperity should come last. People should come first. And that will be our farm workers who have to endure many issues and abuses as part of their work in feeding us. The health challenges with COVID-19 that I mentioned before, pesticide exposure, cultural racial discrimination, lack of understanding that these people pick our food. And you can check out the film The Harvest to see more about that. Climate change impact will affect them most. Heat is the deadliest threat to farm workers right now. And some states are moving in to actually create some protections for that. Florida is one of those states. Now farm workers are having to cope with the massive fires. So this is a huge issue too. And Food First is a great source for more information. So we need some help. So I like to bring in the Sustainable Development Goals and look at how they're focusing on solving these problems with systems thinking. So if you're not familiar with the SDGs, there are a lot of sources that you can find on the internet to dive right in and learn a lot more. And you can see reduced inequalities is very prominent. And number 13 is one of my favorites. We must take climate action. And many of the SDGs cluster together. And so that's why when we combine 2, 10, and 13, we can mobilize for some action to deal with our issues in terms of agriculture and our food system and the climate crisis. And it's interesting that within the very things that are causing all of these problems, agriculture and our food system are the solutions. And you heard that from John talking about Kiss the Ground. Literally, some of the solutions are beneath our feet in terms of soil. We have to build compost. We have to engage in regenerative agriculture, carbon farming, use biodigesters. We teach that at Patel College of Global Sustainability with the great work of Dr. T.H. Culhane. So regenerative agriculture, shifting the paradigm is where we need to go. And there's a shot from Kiss the Ground promoting regenerative agriculture. And just to finish up here, some more solutions and pathways to resilience. Look at this report from California, the Farmer Equity Act. We need more states to take coordinated action to address equity in our agriculture and food system. And we need to employ technology like shipping container farms. We're working on grant money right now at USF in Tampa to get a model freight farm that could go around the state and teach people how we can have climate controlled, resilient agriculture in a shipping container in our inner cities, wherever we want to put it. So look for that in the future. And we need policy. And right now, people are mobilizing on the policy front and trying to create a blueprint for a national food strategy. And COVID has made this call more urgent. So you can check out this resource here, the National Food Strategy. And they have an excellent report that you can look at. And they bring and weave in how COVID-19 has just pushed this agenda forward. We have to act. We have to have a coordinated national policy for our food system, for resilience, for climate adaptation and mitigation, and all of those kinds of things. So it's an urgent call. It's a great booklet. Do take a look at it. And they weave together acceleration of climate change, COVID-19, and how we have to have coordinated strategies. I think we've heard that quite a bit lately, that we need coordinated strategies, not one-off kind of things. And I know that we had a compressed time frame today, but maybe some of you have some thoughts or ideas on pathways to resilience. And Katrina is going to take a look at some of the questions that we might have a minute or two for before we close and move on to the next session. Katrina, what do you have?
Thank you so much, Dr. Hansen. I really enjoyed your presentation as always. I also want to say if any of you guys were really interested in what Dr. Hansen is saying and would like to learn more, the Clio Institute actually hosts a climate and food justice program in summer. We'll be having one next year as well. So if you're interested in that, keep a lookout. So we do have two questions for you, Brooke. One is from Deb Swim. Deb would like to ask, I've heard claims that food transport is sustainable because otherwise on the return trip, the ship/truck will be empty and that is wasteful. What is the argument against that claim?
Well, anytime you have transport and you're using fossil fuels, it's not sustainable. Whether it's a freight train, a truck, an airplane. This is how we move a lot of our foodstuffs around the world. So already that's not sustainable. But what we can do, if that is our system, is we can use backhauling. And this is something that we did in Hawaii with the food basket, which is one of our food pantries in Hawaii. We made sure that if a food distribution truck was going to the other side of the island, that it was not going to come back empty, that we were going to hook the food system up with the food pantry system and make sure if we are using a truck that we are backhauling something going back and forth. Now, a lot of food distribution systems might try to do that, but what we were trying to do in Hawaii is deal with our issues of equity and food insecurity by backhauling. But it's much more sustainable to have local food production so we don't have to haul carrots from California to Florida. We can grow carrots here in Florida, and we can grow carrots a little bit closer. So the whole way that we've set up our food system is not very conducive to sustainability or reducing greenhouse gases. What else do you have, Katrina? Maybe one more, and then we probably should move to the next segment.
Yes, we have one more from Jeff. Jeff would like to ask, intensive animal agriculture is required to meet the current demand for animal product consumption. It is a leading source of emissions along with deforestation and loss of natural sequestration. Meanwhile, on average, 90% of calories are lost in the system. 100 calories of input produces 10 calories of food and 4 for beef. They want us to believe that regenerative and natural animal farming systems are the solution, but there is nowhere near enough land to produce the current amount of animal products. Isn't the only practical long-term and sustainable solution one of reducing the consumption and therefore demand for animal products?
Yeah, I could not agree more. And if you look at other diets around the world, like the Mediterranean diet, it is not so heavily invested in animal products and meat. This is a cultural thing. I'm an anthropologist, and I firmly believe we have got to change our culture. We have to change our eating patterns and our habits. So we absolutely need to eat way less meat. We are a huge meat consumption culture, but we can have adaptation strategies. And I do encourage all of you to check out the book Drawdown. It's always by my side. Silvopasture is a way that we can actually have animal husbandry and ranching in a way that sequesters carbon and is much more sustainable. But yeah, at the end of the day, we have to change our eating habits, not just with meat, but with fruit and vegetables too. We just cannot desire those items that come from halfway around the world because it's not sustainable to transport them. Okay, Katrina, it looks like you have the survey up, so I'll let you talk about that.
Yes, just give me one moment to share my screen. Great. So if you all have noticed, I actually dropped a survey in the chat. So make sure to fill out that survey, because if you fill out that survey, we're actually going to compensate you. You're going to be entered into a raffle, and 3 lucky winners that have filled out that survey will get a zero waste gift box and $25 gift card valued over $70 from Earth Hero. I'm going to give you guys some time to fill out that survey. So while we do that, I actually see a question from Kara, if we can answer that while people are taking time to fill out the survey. Kara would like to say, I stopped eating meat for the climate, and now I've heard processed veggie burgers are bad too. Should I eat grass-fed beef instead?
I personally, I mean, this is just my personal opinion, the more processed food we eat, the less healthy it's probably going to be. I mean, I know plant-based meats are all the rage, and I've tried some and I've enjoyed them. But what if we could simplify things, right? What if we could go back to having foods that we make ourselves? What if we could grow black beans here in Florida and make our own black bean burgers? So I think that is one of the solutions, is to we should move away from processed foods in general because they're not as healthy. There could be fillers even in the plant-based meats. We can have them sometimes. I don't think it's a good idea to go from I'm going to eat a hamburger every day to now I'm going to eat a plant burger every day. Well, okay, how about you try to have it once a week, and the rest of the week make your own food, grow beans in your yard, make your own veggie burgers and things like that. So our reliance on processed food is one of our issues that led to the current conundrum that we're in.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hansen. That leads us to the end of our breakout session. Please continue to fill out the poll. I'm going to stay on a little bit longer to give you all the time to fill out that survey. But with that being said, that is the end of the first day of the Climate and Health Symposium. Thank you so much for coming. We all appreciate you all being here and your interest. And then finally, join us tomorrow for our keynote speaker, Dr. Catherine Hayjo, who is a professor and director of the Climate Science Center at Texas Tech University and the United Nations Champion of the Earth recipient. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks, Katrina. Bye.
Bye.